Socialism is the social ownership and democratic control of socially used properties. It does not destroy private property, but confines it to those properties that are privately owned. Herbert Shelton. Hi, my name is John Rose. And in today's video, I'm going to take another look at a forbidden topic. Remember, there's at least 3 main forbidden topics that will get you in trouble, right? Start talking about someone's diet or religion or politics, and boy, you've opened up a can of worms. And it's interesting, because there are a lot of reasons why people would want to go far left and far right. So in this video today, I'm going to take a closer look at all of this to try to help everyone get a better perspective at where we're at and where other people are at, so we can understand them better. If we take a look at politics and say the far right is 0% government, anarchy, and the far left is 100% government, where we have communism, socialism, collectivism, dare I say fascism, and anarchy, 0% government. People think it's chaos. Well, in a sick world, you know, I've said this many times, you watch my other videos. Anarchy does not work in a sick world. We do have chaos if we have anarchy, because we're out of control. Anarchy just means no leaders, no government. In an ideal world, we would have anarchy. In an ideal world, we would have collectivism. And I've said this many times in other videos. I'm going to expand on that just a little bit in this video. Because in order to go far right, we got to go far left. Now, let's take a look at liberals and conservatives. The liberals are on the left, and the conservatives are a little further to the left. They're still, or further right, they're still on the left. This scale has been sliding. Now, why do people believe in liberalism? Why do they believe in Democrats? Is there a reason? There's a real good reason. Because they're pushing collectivism. It's what we're supposed to do. As I mentioned earlier, just moments ago in many other videos, in an ideal world, we would have anarchy. And we wouldn't be told to cooperate. It would be a given. So that's why it's an easy sell. It's appealing to our basic instinct to cooperate, because that's what we're supposed to do. In a healthy society, and even in a sick society, we got to learn to cooperate better. But remember, that's on our to-get list, not our to-do list. 3 stages of knowledge: things we think, do, and get. We got to learn what to do in the second stage of how to live, so that we end up in the right stage, in the third stage, or on the right half of the third stage, in the top part, where we are cooperating. That's the difference. So, I said this many times. We have a to-do list and a to-get list, and I'll put a link down to a video I've done before specifically on this. Where we get in trouble when people push what's on a to-get list as what should be on a to-do list. Yes, we can use what's on the to-get list as motivation to do the right thing and live the right way. But it's not what we want to put on our to-do list. We're not supposed to be told to cooperate and love and share and all of that. Those are supposed to be a given. But yet it's being used against us to understand or to believe in liberalism. Now, why are a lot of people liberals? It's because the powers that be want us to keep sliding left. Now, I explained this in more detail in one of my videos, Satan's Secret Weapon, which the whole point of that video was to illustrate conventional wisdom, that we've got a library with a bunch of books in it, and every day the powers that be are putting pages in those books to make those beliefs bigger, false beliefs that are bigger, so that we'll believe they're true. That's how conventional wisdom works. If you hear something over and over 100 days in a row, you're going to believe it's true just because you've heard it so many times. But the powers that be know that we go through cycles, and this is something else I pointed out in Sacred Secret Weapon. I'll put a link down below. If you haven't watched it, you got to watch that video. I go over the Cycle cycles. There's 3 main cycles that Aristotle and these guys came up with long ago. And I explain how it all begins with oligarchy. That's where the mob rules. The mob is out of control, however. That's the problem we have. And that's what no one else seems to understand. So the ultimate solution to keep these cycles from repeating is to understand how it all starts. So we don't need to really study that much too far down the road on how different governments have formed. Because all we need to know is how it started. It started when the mob became out of control. Because we lost one of our senses. So we go back to the Cycle cycles. Oligarchy, mob rule, out of control. Start with a monarchy. Then an aristocracy. And then democracy. And then democracy goes through 9 stages. We start in bondage. But then we cycle up. Where we find the truth that we're missing. Find the courage to apply it. Then we finally get liberty, and that produces abundance. But the kind of truth we found, though, was just figuring out how they're controlling us through the printing of our money. And that will provide us a lot of abundance right there. But if we don't find the real knowledge we need that made the mob a problem, then we're going to go back and cycle all over, because the last 4 stages are the down cycles to the 9 stages of democracy. Because abundance will lead to selfishness, and that will lead to complacency, and that will lead to apathy, and that will lead to dependency. It's the dependency stage that we're in right now in America. And that's where mob rules again. And this is the problem with this system we have in America, where it's really a 2-party system with one name. Even though one party is a little bit further to the right than the other, they're way to the left. Because ultimately we don't want a government. But what about socialism? What about collectivism? What about communism? Well, according to Herbert Shelton, socialism is not the same thing as communism. Socialism simply means that socially used property should be socially owned, democratically controlled. So utility companies, things that we all use, should not be privately owned. And of course, that's what the powers that be are trying to do all around the world, aren't they? They're trying to privatize water in other countries. And it's not up for sale. Socially used property should be socially owned. I like that. That makes sense. So when we look at 100% government, we know communism isn't any good because it does away with all properties. Now, Marxism, he saw the problems that capitalism had, but at least he understood that usury was a key. If you read his book on this subject, you'll find that usury is mentioned many times to get rid of usury. So is there a form of socialism we can use? Modify it somewhat? How about fascism? Many times when you hear people complain about us getting too far left, they always throw fascism in there. But most people don't really understand National Socialist. They don't really understand the program. If you look at the 25 points that Hitler and Drexler proposed and told to a couple thousand people back in 1920, February 24th, everyone agreed, jubilant approval, that they liked all 25 of those points. And very few people even know what they are. If you read it, you'd be surprised. You'd be amazed at how this was a pretty good approach to get us back to where we need to be. Because it was all based on the principle of autarky. I'll put a link down below that I did on a video on the raw food, cooked food, and autarky connection. Autarky is a principle of individual national self-sufficiency. That means, number one, we got to take back control of printing our own money. That's why no one really knows what National Socialism is all about. Because it's been demonized so that we don't take a better look at it and see if maybe that might not be a stepping stone to get us to a point where we can get the truth out of how to live. Now, what I haven't done yet, although I sort of have, but I haven't done it completely, is I need to go through all the different things that we have out there, whether it's the U.S. Constitution or these 25 points of the NSDAP that came out, and codify and take the best of every one of them. I'm not saying that we have to duplicate any one person out there, but there are good points that we can take and use. And I like the concept of socially used property being socially owned. And when we understand this concept, we'll realize that YouTube and Facebook, these are utilities, folks. A lot of people say that YouTube and Facebook has a right to allow you to say whatever you want because it's their company. No, it's not. They're a utility, folks. We the people, paid 40 to 45% of the lines that they're using. Therefore, they are a utility. And this point was made just recently by Michael McKibben. And I've talked about Michael McKibben quite a few times. He's the man, the genius, and his company are the people behind social networking. They stole his patents back around 17 years ago. And they used those and gave them to Facebook and YouTube and Google and Amazon and PayPal, Instagram. The technology that these people are using came from Michael McKibben. They stole it from him. And he designed it to make sure there were no back doors because he understood the Constitution. Because there was a revolution in our country a long time ago about people seizing, illegal search and seizure of our property. It's happening now on a scale that's too grand to even think of. When we post something on Facebook and YouTube, it's ours. It doesn't belong to anyone else. And they don't have a right to censor us. It's no different than if I picked up the phone on AT&T to call my sister to talk about the raw food hero's journey. And someone comes in and goes, no, we're not going to let you talk about that. They don't have a right to do that. These are forms of communication. They're public utilities, and they need to be treated as such. If they're socially used, they should be socially owned and democratically controlled. Think about that, folks. YouTube is censoring videos. Facebook is censoring videos. And they're all using stolen technology from Michael McKibben. Michael McKibben has a game plan. Look, he said, I can fix this in a year. We've already worked it out. I've got a team. We can take back control over these utilities and close those back doors so they can't spy on us and give us the right to our own property. Now, if you have a Facebook page, Facebook doesn't have anything to do with it. They don't have any right to come in and tell you what to post. But you have a right to decide what you want to delete or not. And if anyone posts on your Facebook page, it still belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you for some reason. It doesn't work that way. What we do belongs to us. Private property, houses and homes are not destroyed. Private ownership is not destroyed under certain forms of socialism. In fact, they're encouraged. Common interest before personal interest or individual interest was the basis behind National Socialism. It's sad that we've been lied to so much that we don't have an open enough mind to look into certain things to see what they were all about. We automatically think, oh, they're bad because they did this and they did this and they did this. Those are all lies, folks, so that we wouldn't look deeper into what they're doing. One of the biggest things that was part of those 25 points was to get rid of usury. That's why it was a threat, and that's why it's been demonized. So, where are you politically? Do you hate me now, or are you going to unsubscribe to me? Usually when I do videos like this, I always get someone on the far right or the far left mad at me, and they unsubscribe to me. It's a false left-right paradigm, folks. We have to understand the value of cooperating. That's why people are attracted to liberalism. In conservatism, what attracts these people? They see the evil of government. They see how government's being used to control us. It's a weapon system like food is. All of our needs are weapon systems. I explained this before. 12 essential needs, air, water, and food. They can poison those, not teach us how to live. Those other subsequent needs that are part of those 2 additional temporary needs, they can be used against us also. The media can be used against us. The government can be used against us. So why are people attracted to the far right, anarchy? Keeping in mind that anarchy doesn't work, 100% anarchy doesn't work in a sick world. It's what we get in an ideal world. And why are people wanting less government? Because they see the threat government has to our liberties. They understand, or some of them do, that the powers that be are using the government to go through these cycles. Remember, it all started with oligarchy. That's what created the monopolies, the aristocracies, and the democracies. And then democracies go through these stages where they end up independence. Now we're back into the mob rule again. Hate to admit it, but growing up watching TV, watching the popular shows, they programmed my mind to think left. And it was an easy sell, because who doesn't want to cooperate and give to people who are in need? But you have to understand that's what gets us in trouble. As we get into this dependency stage of democracy, people realize, hey, I'm going to vote for Joe Blow, and he's going to give me all these things I'm wanting. Not realizing that's going to be the decline of our country. That's why a middle class is so important. I've explained that before. The powers that be look at the world as 2 main groups. Third world countries don't have a middle class. 40,000 children dying every day. They're easy to control. Industrialized countries, they have a middle class, and it's needed to pay the taxes and to make things better, but they have to be killed or culled every century or so often, because that's what the powers that be fear the most. Remember, last century, 262 million people were murdered during peacetime by their governments. It's called democide. You can Google that. That's a study done at the University of Hawaii. And as Aristotle pointed out when he said that there are the Cycle cycles, he came up with 8 things we need to do to make sure this cycle doesn't repeat itself. One of them, we have to be educated about history. We got to find the truth about history so it doesn't repeat itself. But then he said we have to have a large middle class. And guess what? Point number 16 was in these 25 points of the NSDAP. We demand that we create a large middle class. That was Hitler's crime. He knew how to destroy the powers that be. That's why Germany went from the poorest country to the richest country in 4 years. They called it the German miracle. Hitler, Time magazine's Man of the Year in 1938. The whole world was looking at Germany saying, what are you guys doing? Powers that be couldn't have that. So they had to attack them. Did the same thing to Japan. Did the same thing to Gaddafi in Libya. When you break away from the powers that be, don't let someone print your money, we start prospering. Remember, truth, courage, liberty, abundance. That's what Germany proved to the world. We live on an abundant planet. Just by finding how they're controlling us. Absolute tool control money. I'm going to print it, loan it to you, create debt. Should never exist. Now you're going to be debt slaves. Now your children will be born into debt, bondage. Be working for us. It's an illusion. Then we've got the ultimate tool of control, our health. It's all about us being sick. And we'll never figure that out as long as the powers that be control all the money and can continue to control our educational systems, so we can't even do what Aristotle says we have to have, a good education. If you don't want history to repeat itself, open up your mind. Entertain a thought without accepting it. Consider the possibility there might be some of those 25 points that you might agree with. I looked at them and there wasn't one I didn't think was not reasonable, and I would trade for an instant. This whole planet would be better off if everyone adopted these 25 points that Hitler and Drexler brought up in 1920. We'd be better off. Mainly because it did away with usury. Now, there are other programs that did away with usury, and we'd still be better off. The key here has to do with knowledge of how to live, the ultimate tool of control. Because even if we can take away control of our money from someone else, if we don't understand that we can't control ourselves, that the mob is out of control, everything is going to cycle back around. Once again, if we look at how the Clico cycle started with oligarchy, monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, and how democracy ends up with dependency. The last stage, mob rule, we're going to vote all of our money away. Mob rule, you've got to have someone controlling us. The mob rule is what created the need for a government. It's a subsequent need. We shouldn't have it. We need anarchy, but people who are pushing anarchy now don't realize it doesn't work when the mob is out of control. And this is what we don't seem to understand. If we're incapable of self-control, then group control is out of the question also. So the whole concept of government has failed to begin with. And yet, in order to get it where we need to be, we might need to look at some of the principles in fascism to see which ones we can use. We don't have to adopt all of them. Although it was all based on the principle of autarky. The most important thing that was behind the success of the German people was to have a common interest and a common purpose for the betterment of their country. Common interest before individual interest. It's a simple concept. And it appeals to a large group of people because deep down we know we're supposed to help people. But when we have sick people who are controlling everything and trying to make these cycles go through these cycles or stages of democracy to go through the same cycle so we go right back to bondage again, as long as they're in control, it's going to happen. So there's a lot of things we can do downstream, folks, to start making this world better and help us reach the tipping point. One is to realize that socially used properly really should be socially owned. We've got to stop the privatization of certain industries that are used against us. Remember, all it takes is a belief in something and you can create an entire industry that should not even exist. So, am I a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, an anarchist, socialist, collectivist, communist? No, no, no. Neo-Nazi? Oh my God, he's a neo-Nazi. Boy, they love to call you names, don't you? Or don't they? Folks, all I know is the ultimate tool of control. We don't know how to live. The absolute tool of control. Someone's printing our money and making us debt slaves. What's the best form of government? Again, I haven't gone back and done this. I need to. I need to codify, and this is what I do well at. I like looking at a whole bunch of different people's ideas on things and taking the best of them and coming up with what I think is the best. I've done that with many subjects. I have yet to do it with governments and politics. It's a big job, a big project. I've been dabbling in it over the years with an open mind, trying to figure out, well, what are these people doing? Why has it been demonized? Is there anything good we can take from it? Is there anything useful we can get? We don't have to take everything. Are there any points that are really powerful? Of course there are. We have to understand the principle of autarky. That was the whole basis behind the German success. Both individual and national self-sufficiency. We have to have a common interest, and those interests should come before the individual interest. In fact, I thought of this a long time ago, and I thought of it the other day, and I meant to look back in my files to see if I was missing anything. I pretty much remembered it. This was several decades ago. I came up with something, and I said that all of our individual needs should supersede all of our individual wants. One of our needs is to have natural food. Now, what if I want to eat unnatural food? You can't have it because it interferes with your need to eat natural foods. But then we have society's needs and society's wants. And I thought to myself back then that society's needs should come before individual needs, and individual needs should come before society's wants. And obviously, society's needs come before individual wants also. And then we have nature. Nature's needs should come before society's needs and wants and individual needs and wants. Because the environment is our external metabolism. It should be number one. Everything we should do should be to make the environment the best it can be. That's the number one need. Then our needs as a society should come next. Then our individual needs should come. Then we can take a look at society's wants and individual wants, and thank God, nature doesn't have any wants. Just has some basic needs, of which we're not satisfying very well, are we? But that could change if we could learn the value of satisfying our own individual needs. So it all comes back to us, doesn't it? We all play a role individually on keeping us where, whether it's keeping us where we are or getting us to where we need to be. And I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I sure do like to look at people who get results. We know communism didn't get results. That doesn't work. National Socialism, they got results. And what did they do? Did they do away with private ownership? No. Did they do it with private companies? No. They did away with big business. They did away with someone printing your money. They took this whole belief about making a profit at the expense of everyone else illegal. And it goes back to The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, father of modern economics, where he said there are those who live by wages, there are those who live by rent, and then there are those who live by profit. First two are okay. Their desires are compatible with society's desires. But those desires of those who live by profit are not compatible to society's desires or needs or both, because they want to narrow their competition and widen their market. That's why Herbert Shelton was against capitalism. He saw it as a form of parasitic invasion. That's not the word I'm looking for. And I know a lot of people are going, wait a second, John. Capitalism is the only thing that works. Socialism has never worked. That's not true. What Germany was doing was working. I'm not saying that's the answer. But they found a way to create a commonality among the people, to agree on achieving certain goals for the betterment of that whole country. So I like the principle of autarky. I like the concept of personal and national self-sufficiency. Makes sense to me. Now, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of people coming at me from all different sides in this video. A lot of people still believe in the hogwash they've heard about what happened in the last century. It's not true. It's all designed to make you not want to look into more detail about the NSDAP program. The German Workers' Party, they had a pretty good program. And what was really interesting about the program of the German Workers' Party is they said that once they accomplish their goals, it has a limited existence. It's of limited duration is what they said. Think about that. Who's out there saying that we're going to start this program up, but it's of limited duration? Once we accomplish our goals, no more, that's it. Now some may argue, well, wait a second. National Cancer Society, they got in their bylaws, as soon as we find a cure for cancer, we'll dismantle. Isn't that the same? I go, no, it's not. It's not the same. Because they say once we find the solution, then we'll dismantle. Germans were saying we found the solution, once we apply it, once it's implemented, then we dismantle. In the other case, with the National Cancer Society, they're never going to find the cure because then they'll have to dismantle. If they had the cure and all they had to do is tell everybody, then it could easily be dismantled. We did it. We accomplished it. It's not the same thing. So it's interesting to me that most entities that are created to solve our problems are actually the number one impediment why we can't solve the problem. Because they become their own entity, they become a life on their own. They don't want to die. They don't want to be of a limited duration. Think about what I'm saying here, folks. What you've been told is wrong. Anybody who wants to implement a program and says it's only of limited duration is not someone who's trying to conquer the world. We've been lied to on so many levels about history so that it repeats itself. And what we need to do is we need to take an objective look and take the best of the best of the best of the best and figure out what's going to work. And the first place we start when it comes to the downstream work with the government is take back control of printing our money. Get rid of all this odious debt that we supposedly owe so that we can appreciate the abundance this planet has to offer. And when we take away the absolute tool of control, they won't be able to control our so-called experts, and eventually our experts are going to find the truth about how to live so that the ultimate tool of control will be dissolved also. That's the ultimate goal we have in life, folks. We got to understand that there's one thing we're missing more than anything else. It's very simple, it's very fundamental. It's about how to eat, how to live. We haven't been taught that. We've been taught lies. Our parents taught the lie to us. We get out in the real world, everywhere we look, everyone else was taught the same lie, so everyone believes it. As a result, we keep passing it down and passing it down and passing it down. Part of our traditions we have to understand. Remember, our traditions is not only the accumulation of all of our wisdom, it's the accumulation of all of our mistakes. All the great things about us, all the horrible things about us. Now that's pretty simple to understand. Why can't we figure it out? Because the powers that be don't want us to figure that out. Because that's the absolute tool of control. They could not control us if we were healthy. They couldn't create a Progerian class to fight their battles. Think about it. If every one of us stopped cooking our food, we would feel the connection to everything around us. We would not want to join someone's army to go kill somebody. We wouldn't have a need to defend ourselves because we weren't going around killing ourselves. And that's because we were no longer killing our food. As long as we kill our food, we're going to kill animals. And as long as we kill animals, we're going to kill ourselves. And it all started when we started cooking our food. We started killing our food. Thou shalt not kill. One law, according to the Essenes, thou shalt not kill. If you can't obey that law, now we're going to have to create a whole bunch of other laws to help you guys do better. We shouldn't have to have all these laws. The more laws there are, the more corruption there is. The fewer the laws, the better. Again, anarchy, 0% government, that's what we need. It's what we have in an ideal world. But how do we get there? Do we keep trying to slide more to the right? Taking away the power of the government so they quit messing with us? Well, there's good, the government does good things, obviously. There are good programs, people are in need. Some industries do need to be regulated so they don't do bad things. But that's all because we don't know how to live. That's why you really can't wrap your brain around any of this unless you understand the raw food, cooked food perspective. Be sure and watch the raw food, cooked food, and autarky connection. If you don't understand the ramifications that come from cooking our food, you're missing the boat. You don't understand why aglachery is a problem, mob rule. You don't understand how that's what creates the monarchies and the aristocracies, aristocracies and the democracies. That's what allows us to go ultimately back into dependency, where the mob rules again, and we go back to the same cycle. We've been doing it over and over and over for a long time. And why does it repeat itself? Because we don't understand it. We get tricked into fighting between the left and the right, this false left-right paradigm that's within the far right and the far left, or far left and the far right. It's an illusion, folks, because both sides are controlled by the powers that be. There are benefits to both sides. Why are people attracted to the right or left? Because we're supposed to cooperate. We're supposed to share the abundance on this planet. Why are we attracted to the far right? Because government is a tool, a weapon system that's being used to control us. Remember Socialism, three-legged stool analogy. Got the government, the big corporations, and the people. And if the people don't get organized, the other two will, and they'll control us. A lot of people know that government's a problem. That's why it is so attractive for people to be on the right side of this political spectrum. But very few people on this spectrum really understand what created it, and that anarchy and collectivism are both the answers from the right and from the left, but it's on our to-get list. It's what we get when we stop cooking our food. It's on our to-get list. Things we think, things we do, things we get. We don't have knowledge of how to live, so instead we make mistakes, we have problems. Everybody's saying, look, we should be up there cooperating. How do we get there? Come back here in the second stage, tell people to cooperate, it doesn't work. Gotta come back to the second stage of knowledge, say, you gotta learn how to live. Oh, gotta come back up here, find the knowledge I need, apply that knowledge, and when we apply the knowledge of how to live, and we all do that, then we have collectivism, then we have anarchy. We won't have a government that's controlling us. We won't have sick people trying to profit off of us. And remember, those who live by profit do not have the same interests as those of the common people. It's harming us. So there's a lot to be said about why people would criticize capitalism, the thing about money. And to make more sense out of this, you got to understand there are 7 stages of money, which are really 2 stages. One is before the fall of mankind, we had a gift mentality. After the fall of mankind, we had an exchange mentality. Money went through 6 cycles. I've gone over this before. I'll put a link down below explaining these stages of money. Money shouldn't exist. It's a subsequent need also. Government shouldn't exist. It's a subsequent need also. And the only way to eventually get rid of those is for us to change our mentality. So we'll revert back to a gift mentality. So what kind of government do we need to do? How do we get from where we are to where we need to be? That's a tough question, isn't it? If we can reach the tipping point, critical mass, and things start changing exponentially, how is the government system going to change? How are we going to go? Are we going to go immediately to the left? Are we going to go more to the right and then all the way to the left? How is that going to go? I don't know. It's interesting to think about. And I've mentioned before that once we reach the tipping point, it's hard to really speculate what happens after that, because it's going to be amazing what happens to this planet when we wake up and we all have the same mentality and we all have a common interest. And we're no longer competing for resources on this abundant planet. We're cooperating and sharing the abundance this planet has to offer. We understand the concept of the more we give, the more we receive. But until that day, what do? How do we work toward a resource-based economy? Is that part of the plans to get there? We don't want to do away with private property or private ownership. But when we look at properties that are socially used, they should not be privately owned. And there are a lot of properties that qualify under that umbrella, isn't there? So I've given you guys a lot to think about, and there's a lot for you guys to research on this subject. When you look at this with an open mind and you look at both versions, you'll realize one version is riddled with deception and the other makes so much sense because it fits with all the other pieces. I did a video on how to evaluate historical evidence. I'll be sure and put a link down below. That's a must-see if you haven't seen that yet. Aristotle said the mark of an intelligent mind is the ability to entertain a thought without accepting it. That's what we have to do. We have to look at the version we've been given, and we think it's true, and we only have one version, and be intelligent about it. Consider another version. Now let's assume, after we looked at both sides completely, the other side, not piecemeal, but entirely, so we get a big picture. Now we got to assume both sides are true and both sides are false. So at first we only had one version. We assumed it was true. Never assumed it could be false and there was another version. But now that we have two versions, let's turn them into four versions. Both are true, both are false. When you look at the version we've been given to see if it's false, and you understand how con artists work, when you understand how psychopaths work, you'll see it's riddled with deception. Riddled! There is no deception on the other side. And why is that important? Why did they do it to us? So that we would associate the man who understood the principle of autarky and made it famous and made it work, that we would associate him with mass murder. Never happened. And that upsets me. For anyone to be falsely accused of something. It upsets me to know that I was brought up in this country thinking Indians were savages. Based on the stupid TV programs I watched on TV. They were the savages. They scalped us. They came and attacked us. Turned out it was just the opposite. The white man that came to this country were the savages. We were the ones that put bounties on these people and started scalping them, and they merely scalped us in retaliation. I didn't find that out until I got into college. It broke my heart to think that I had spent that much time thinking those people were bad. And I feel the same way about other people who've been demonized. Because the powers that be don't want us to look at what they did. They did something they don't want us to understand. The number one threat to the powers that be last century is now the epitome of evil. For one reason. Hey guys!
Hey.
How y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Another good day. I'm gonna take that one home.
Yeah, that's a real sweetheart.
Yeah, it looks so much like my dog.
Yeah.
And again, why do they do it? Why have they demonized this man? Because he did something the powers that be don't want us to look at. He followed the principles of autarky. He understands the importance of national and individual self-sufficiency. He understood that common interest should come before individual interest. He wanted to unite people behind a common goal. And we've been lied to about everything. So, open your mind. Do some research. And when you look at the other version, look at everything they say. Don't just look at one item and immediately cancel it out. Look at everything. And then look for deception on that side and come back and look at deception on the side you were given. There's no deception on the truth. And it fits with the big picture. And their deception fits with the big picture too. It's understandable what they're doing. So, what is it the average person to do? It's tough, folks. Our brains have been molded ever since we were young. I'm 64. My brain was molded to think on the left side of the spectrum so that I would be part of that momentum to get the cycle to recycle back over again. But I woke up to the reality that it's a false left-right paradigm. It's to give the illusion that we have a choice when neither one of these systems are the right system. Yes, there's a reason why this looks good, and there's a reason why this looks good. There's a reason why it appeals to both people. And there are reasons why both sides are bad. And it's hard for the average person to make any sense out of this. You know, I was really never interested in politics as a younger man. But when I found the most valuable knowledge in the world over 28 years ago, I started getting very philosophical, and that started my journey in learning a little bit more about politics. But it wasn't until maybe the last decade or so that I really I've got a better grasp of it. And I can see how it plays a big role in our society. And now it's just a huge distraction. But it's something we have to think about. So whether you're on the far left or the far right or wherever you are in between, be open-minded. Realize that the other people on the other spectrum have a reason to believe the way they do, and yet they may not understand what you believe. And conversely, you may not understand what they believe, and they don't understand what you believe. Although I think everyone understands this concept that we should cooperate, which is why it's such an easy sell. Collectivism is an easy sell, especially when the powers that be keep the middle class low and have a large poor class who are the ones who are going to be the mob rule that votes a democracy right out of existence. That's where we are right now. Or at least that's where we were. Things are changing, actually. It looks like there's a tide that's coming that might surprise quite a few people. It's yet to be seen, but I've been hearing a lot of good things. And remember one thing always, folks. Virtually everyone in the, almost all of the patriot leaders out there are controlled opposition. Almost all patriot leaders are controlled opposition. And I'm speaking of Douglas Gabriel specifically, because he has Michael McKibben on his show all the time. And they're going over some good stuff, and it reminds me of Alex Jones and how Alex Jones had people on there telling good stuff. But Douglas Gabriel, is failing the Hitler test more and more and more and more every time I listen to him. He didn't fail it very much in the beginning, but every time he worked with Michael McKibben, the last video I saw of his the other day, 55-minute video or so, he didn't start screaming Nazi and fascism until the 40-minute mark. But boy, he laid it on heavy. When we talk about communism, socialism, collectivism, fascism doesn't belong in that same group, even though it is 100% government. But it's different. It's not the same as communism. And then socialism, as Khalil Gibran once said, until we reduce the human language to 7 words, we'll never understand one another. So that's part of the problem when we talk about subjects like this, when you say the words socialism or fascism, we conjure up certain things. And the problem, of course, is going back to Satan's secret weapon. As soon as we hear the word Hitler, fascism, Nazis, we all automatically think these are evil people. They were killing all these people, and it's all a lie. It's all a lie. 6 million Jews supposedly were holocausted, gassed, and burned. In reality, there were somewhere between 262,000 and 272,000 total deaths in all those camps. Total. And now it's 6 million, just one group. It's a lie. It's a flat out lie so that you won't look into this in more detail. Why do you think it's illegal in 17 countries in Europe to even question this? Because the truth falls apart, or the lies fall apart when the truth is presented. The truth doesn't need any protection. The truth should not be suppressed. And I know that's hard to believe, isn't it? We've got so many references that make us think this happened. I can reflect back on all the movies I watched growing up. Sound and Music, The Great Escape, TV show after TV show. There's a movie after movie. There's a new movie coming out now. Something about the Nazi hunters, I think is what it's called. They're trying to get you to not look at what's behind fascism. 25 points of the NSDAP, where they demanded certain things for their country, for the betterment of their country. And it was set up to have limited duration. Think about that, folks. limited duration. When have you ever seen any program out there saying we're of limited duration? I already explained the National Cancer Society. It's different. They weren't offering a solution. They said, once we find the solution. No, we found a solution. We know the biggest problem we face on this planet. It's the worst of us. And what most of us don't understand is that they're a reflection of all of us. And the only way to make the worst better is to make all of us better. It's all it takes, folks. It's a simple, simple solution. And things could change very quickly. And there's a lot of brilliant minds out there. Once you can open up your mind and look at the other side, the other versions, I challenge you guys, do a Google search and look for these 25 points that Hitler and Drexler put out in 1920. I challenge you guys to look at any one of those and say, any one of them is bad. Not one of them was bad. Every one of them made their country stronger. They had a provision for religious freedom. They didn't say you had to be a Christian, although that was the fundamental basis behind it. But they understood the evil associated with people wanting to make money. So there are provisions to exclude that. So open up your mind, folks. Do a little research if you care to. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. There's only one lesson that needs to be taken from all of this. And that is that the powers that be don't want us to look at anybody who's broken away from the system and how they did it. So let's be open-minded. Let's take a look at what Gaddafi did. Do a Google search and look at what Gaddafi did for his country. Look how well the people were better off by doing it that way. Look what happened to Germany, where their economy was destroyed because of these people. You could have a barrel full of money, you couldn't even buy a loaf of bread. People were starving in that country. And they went from the poorest to the richest just by kicking out the international bankers that print our money, make us debt slaves. So, government, money, the media. These are subsequent needs, folks. Ultimate solution for all these needs that are being used to control us is for all of us to play our role. Get reconnected. Change our mentality individually so we can change it collectively, and then make sure our common interest, society's needs, come before our individual interests, our individual wants. The day we can finally do that, folks, and we wake up everybody, that's when everyone's in for a treat.